Well, welcome to the Headless DAM with Cloudinary Bootcamp course. I'm Marcelo in the Headless Creator. As always, you can get a hold of me right there, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. I'm also your host throughout this entire bootcamp. In this interview with Sam Brace, he's the Director of Customer Education at Cloudinary, and he's also a presenter on the first lesson, which you do want to check out. You're going to learn in this interview, you're going to learn all about digital asset management. What is that and how is it different from your media manager, let's say in your Headless CMS, plus a couple of other things we're going to be learning. So without further ado, let's get Sam in. Sam, welcome.
Thanks, Marcelo. Happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. I'm excited about your lesson. It's going to be a really great lesson, which everybody should check out. It's under the introduction section. So thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I'm excited for people to watch it and hopefully get something away from it.
It's going to be very cool. So let's get started. First of all, tell us a little bit about your background. How'd you get into technology and what you're doing today?
Sure. Yeah. So interestingly enough, I started my career in the journalism space, trying to talk with people, be able to figure out their story, ask the right questions. And then it progressed me into a career in public relations and then into a overall communications field. And then what they found was that, well, because you can take a technical topic and distill it into a good story, have you ever considered training? And so I started moving into the technical training space. And then suddenly I'm now running a team of full documentation and certification programs. And then I found my way to Cloudinary, which is where I work today. And I've been there since 2018, and we built their education program from the ground up. So it's an interesting journey. Definitely didn't start with a computer science degree by any means, and kind of fell into coding throughout the process.
So what kind of journalism did you do? Like newspaper, TV, radio? Where were you at?
I was kind of all over the place, to be honest. I had lots of classes that were focused on court reporting. So that was a really exciting time. Where I happened to be based in Southern Arizona, we had lots of border issues. So that was also an interesting topic to be able to follow during the time. So it's definitely where broadcast, print, online journalism, when I was getting my degree, was kind of emerging at the point where we're like, this is what a blog is. And it was a very exciting time for that. So it's lots of things that I was able to learn. But over time, it definitely kept growing and growing and growing with the rise of social media, the rise of just what the internet's become because of the speeds, the availability that's come across it.
So what made you decide not to pursue that? I mean, you went to school for that.
Well, I think it's where one thing that I definitely found was that I've always loved being able to communicate something, especially something that's slightly technical, and be able to break it down into simple, easy to understand terms, regardless if it's someone that's in the space, because if you can explain it simply, it probably means you understand your subject matter. But to the same extent, being able to explain to someone that has no concept of what an API is, or what a CMS is, or what does headless mean. They're thinking about horsemen instead of content management systems. It's where we can be able to break down that topic very, very easily. So I think that's been the common thread through all of it. And it's also where I'm always willing to look at a new opportunity. So it's to say that I haven't lost my love for journalism, but it's also to say that a lot of things I loved about the journalism space, I've been able to apply in my current day-to-day.
Well, I got to tell you, and I agree with you, that training is very rewarding. I used to run an e-learning team couple of years ago, probably like 4 years ago, and loved it. I mean, it's always nice to know that when somebody doesn't know something, now they know something because of you.
I agree. It's a wonderful feeling when you kind of see that aha moment, that light bulb appear above their head. It's where they're like, oh, I was finally able to make that connection for them to make a common understanding. And that's always the goal of any storyteller, regardless if you have any journalism, the teaching space, public relations space, any type of communications. You're trying to convince, you're trying to teach, you're trying to sell. All of that is making a connection.
Well, let's give our viewers that aha moment. Let's start with, what is a DAM? What's a digital asset management system? By the way, I love saying that word over and over, and nobody can get offended.
I agree. It's one of those things where you can play with it too, where we're like, let's get done with this damn training. And of course,
exactly.
So you're able to drop that word in there. But no, so ultimately what a DAM is a digital asset management system. And it's important to even explain that acronym, as people say like, well, we're going to put it in the DAM. But normally you want to add that qualifier of a system into that, because all we're saying is digital asset management with that, right? But it is where this is going to be the central hub for a lot of the assets that an organization needs, whether those are images, whether those are videos, whether those are templates that we need to be able to use for people to help with publication, for printing, whether that's digital publication, whether that's actual physical printing on paper. There's lots of things that happen when we're talking about assets, valuable things that people are using for content delivery, content management. And this creates this nice central hub, kind of a library that you can check things out of. And you can use it for all sorts of purposes, whether you're doing it for content management, for the web, for mobile applications, whether you're doing it for product information management systems like a PIM, whether you're doing inside of a CRM. There's so many things, but if you have a central place, it ensures that nothing ever gets siloed and nothing ever gets hidden or forbidden from somebody when they're going to try that thing. So it's definitely where it's this nice central spot where everything is brand guideline approved and also can easily be found.
Now, I could hear already somebody going like, but wait a minute, I'm in Contentful, I'm in Content Stack, I'm in, put name of Headless CMS here. I have a media manager in there. This sounds a lot like that. Why do I need to go buy another system? So in other words, the core of the question is, what is the difference between a DAM system and a media manager in a CMS?
Great question. It's a really good question. And I love the examples you gave with Contentful and Content Stack as well, because when we're talking about a DAM system, they actually typically will want to have deep integrations with those types of systems, depending on how you work, where a Contentful and a DAM system could actually play very, very well together. Because if you have that DAM system and you have your creative team accessing it for Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign type of purposes, you have your marketing team pulling it for that next campaign that may not even touch the Contentful environment in any way. You don't want them to have to go hunt that information down inside of Contentful. You want them to go in and do that, and also have a certain set of user roles and permissions to make sure that we're only accessing the right levels of files, where sometimes with a CMS, most of the user roles and permissions are tied to web publication, not about can I even upload a file, or what type of file can I upload, or can I moderate that file? Can I get a web URL for this specific thing? Can I add optimizations to it? This is where a DAM can get into those certain levels of granularity and pass some of those through to a Contentful or a Content Stack or another CMS platform. But it is also to say that they almost work hand in hand, where if you have a very well functioning CMS, we're not saying to do away with it by any means, because a DAM is not a replacement for a CMS, but as to say that it can add so much more functionality and versatility to ensure that your team has the right people pulling the right files at the right time and not cluttering up the overall flow of what you need for web publication.
I love the example you gave because, for example, if I'm in a PIM and I need an asset, I'm not going to go into Contentful number one because I may not even have access to Contentful or any other headless. We're not picking on Contentful here, any headless CMS, right? I may not have access to that headless CMS. And you don't want to integrate those systems because they have nothing to do with each other, possibly. So everybody goes to the DAM and pulls whatever they need, right? So the DAM now is sort of the central place for all your assets. That's why it's a asset management system. So we know some of the benefits of a DAM. What are some of the challenges of a DAM, either from working with it or from implementing it in an organization?
It's a really good question. And I think some of the challenges that you'll find with DAM systems are not different when you're talking about other systems that you're going to deal with within an organization, whether that's a CRM, a CMS, a PIM, is that ownership is a big factor here. You want to typically say, we have one or a certain team of people that are going to be the main administrators, the main librarians for this. And that goes back to that concept I mentioned a little bit earlier about user roles and permissions. If we just let everybody in there, it kind of gets cluttered up because no one is in charge of saying, this needs to be organized, this needs to be maintained, because they all have their different needs and wants. So when we're talking about this, being able to say we can hire a DAM administrator or a librarian, if we want to use real DAM terms there, to say this is the person that's making sure that all the metadata is being applied. We have all of the business use cases to ensure that people can find these files the right way, have all the right roles, permissions, the governance that's tied to that, taxonomy to ensure that everything's named with a certain consistency. That is highly important. And if you don't set up those procedures before you go down the DAM path, it can definitely become a case where you have 10,000 people with 10,000 ideas putting all of their ideas into one spot. And then you wonder, how did our content get so misorganized? Because it's basically you have 10,000 people in a room and they're creating a mess rather than something that everybody knows how to use. So you need to have basically an overseer to this process. And then eventually not have it where it's just one person, but almost like a guild, a group of people that agree to the standards, the processes that should be happening when we have certain things happening with the DAM. Because if we want it to be the single source of truth, we want to ensure that everything that we have in there is true. So definitely one of the pains that you find people running into when they're thinking about the process.
And honestly, I think that's a standard pain, not just for DAM, but for any other kind of system, right? You can place, I mean, the same thing with a headless CMS, you want single source of truth, but to do that, you need standards, you need people to agree on taxonomy, and that's always the hardest thing in any company for people to do, is to come to agreement, to break down those walls, to work together. I think that's a challenge in general, but
and
definitely.
To expand on that, Marcelo, I think one thing that I have seen work really well, and because we're obviously talking to people that are technology savvy, this is Headless Creator, right? But talking to someone that may not be as savvy in the overall tech space, but has done digital asset management, because DAM systems, librarian type of work has happened for years before computers were even a concept. But if you have someone that understands how to organize files and structure them in a way, you could actually technically teach them into a digital asset management system, because the core concepts of taxonomy and governance are things that are applicable outside of the tech space for sure.
100% agree with you. I always push for a content architect when they're implementing a headless CMS, because you need that one person that can guide everybody, can teach everybody, can work with them too. And it's the same thing with a DAM system, right? So definitely.
Completely great.
Yeah, Sam, this was a great interview. Thank you so much. If people want to get a hold of you, would it be that email or anything else you'd like to give?
Absolutely. That email, you can always email me. I reply to everybody, by the way. So if you send me an email and you're just like, hey, I saw you on Headless Creator, I will reply. Absolutely. But the same
I can vouch for that. You're great at that.
Thank you. And then the same said, I'm also very active on LinkedIn. I'm trying to regularly post about things that we're experiencing at my company, that we're experiencing in the customer education space. So feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. You'll find me just by my name as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcel. This has been a pleasure.
And thanks to the rest of you for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this interview. And like always, keep checking those lessons, because you're going to be learning a lot of stuff. And if you want to get a hold of me, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. Cheers.